I'm a school social worker, so
Okay.
I work
Oh,
with
wow.
students K to 5. So
Okay.
it's more so just educating. So if there's anything you would like to share,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
because I do have students that sometimes will have identity things going on, and obviously my job is to support them from a school standpoint.
And really quick, before you get started, I just want to clarify. You want him to kind of start with his point before you kind of give
Well, I
your
don't
perspective
really-
on this? Is
I
that
don't
correct?
Really, I don't want to say that I have an opinion yet.
Okay,
I'm
that's totally
educating
fine.
myself so
I
that
can-
I
I can do my quick spiel.
You're talking to the
Sure.
best guy that travels the world talking about this topic,
Okay.
so go for it. Chris, take it away.
Sure. So yeah, since September 2020, I've been traveling North America. I went to the UK on one trip recently as well, just having conversations out on the street. So here's the deal: we got all these kids today with this condition that we call gender dysphoria, which is essentially it's just self-loathing. These kids have they have some other mental health comorbidity going on. There might have been abuse or trauma. There might have been sexual abuse, some other mental health problems. There's cutting, there's eating disorders, whatever. For some reason, these kids aren't comfortable.
Okay.
A lot of these kids historically have grown up to be gay. So a lot of gay men, if you ask them when they were younger, maybe they were more effeminate. Maybe they played with the girls more. That's fine. My position is there's no right way to be a boy or a girl. You're beautiful just as you are. No drugs or scalpels needed. But there's this ideology being taught in schools, it's all over social media, it's coming out of academia, and it's teaching these kids that they have a gender identity, which might be different than their sex. So what is a gender identity? No one can ever really tell me. But when you look at some of the resources that the actors produce, like the most popular one, it's called this genderbread person. You might have seen it. It's a gingerbread man.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
And I know there's a lot
Very-
of vocab that's changing. And
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's all activist vocab, honestly. But the genderbread person defines your gender identity as being based on your personality, your job, hobbies, likes, dislikes, roles in society, and expectations upon you. So what does your job have to do with your gender? Nothing. What do your hobbies or your likes have to do with your gender?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. We've got the Boston Children's Hospital, which is now the second-ranked pediatric hospital in the country. It was number one. But they have one of the most prestigious gender clinics in America. And the director of that gender clinic, they produced all these videos. And the director, her name's Jeremy Carswell. She says that things like a little girl trying to pee standing up, a boy who doesn't want to get a haircut, playing with the opposite gender toys, and maybe trying on a sibling's clothing, these are all signs that your child is transgender and can be treated. No matter which way you slice it, all of this ideology comes down to is sexist, aggressive stereotypes. And instead of telling our children they're beautiful just as they are, these children are being taught that they might have been born in the wrong body. What an abusive thing to tell a child. Can you imagine someone telling you that you were born wrong? That you should have been a boy? Nonsense. Just because you're a tomboy, maybe? More than half the women growing up today are tomboys. And the kids that end up in these gender clinics, and we know this from their own statistics, like in England, there's this gender clinic where all the kids went to. It's called the Tavistock. They have a wait list of 8,000 children right now. But 35% of the children there have moderate to severe autism. And if you include the mild cases, it goes about 50%. Tons of these kids historically grew up to be gay. The majority of kids with gender dysphoria grew up to be gay. But we also know that when you just left kids alone and let them grow up, that almost all of them grew out of it, and it went away. And so people like my buddy Mike here grew up to be the beautiful gay man that he is.
Thank you, baby.
So beautiful.
He is
God.
very good.
But if he was growing up today, he might be led to believe that he has a gendered soul, like he's really a girl inside, and that he won't find true happiness unless he goes on puberty blockers, estrogen, and gets surgery.
So you're not denying that trans people exist. It's more so just
My position
children
is that,
starting from before 18, before they're able to make their own.
yeah, now if an adult wants to call themselves trans, I mean, it's really just a label. Transition is something you do, it's
Yeah.
not something you are. But no, trans kids, no. They're called girls and boys. And they're going through a natural stage of identity formation. We should leave them alone, especially when there's so much indoctrination going on. It's not all education in the schools anymore, it's indoctrination. And we just need to leave the kids alone, let them grow up, let them figure themselves out, give them the body positive message that they're beautiful just as they are. Because changing the body of a child, stopping their physical development
Yeah.
with experimental drugs that have never been approved for this purpose,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's child.
And I'm always like scrolling on TikTok and just looking at different things. And I have seen a lot of people detransitioning. Like, so they're older and they realize that they want to detransition back into their original sex that they identified. So it's just very interesting.
And maybe we could touch on some of the negatives in that aspect of what the process is to detrans. I know we know a
I know a lot
handful
of
of
these.
transgender individuals that are detransitioning.
One that's very well known in the country right now, she's been testifying at legislatures all across the states. Chloe Cole. This girl, she had autism, she had some abuse and some trauma. At 13, they put her on puberty blockers, testosterone. And at 15, she had a double mastectomy.
15.
Yeah. And now, because she was on testosterone for a few years, she doesn't know if she can have kids. She's still having problems related to the double mastectomy.
Yeah.
She's 18 now. She's suing. Another girl, Layla Jane, same lawyer, Harmeet Dillon, is the lawyer. She had her breast cut off when she was 13. They put her on puberty blockers, testosterone at the age of 12. These are babies.
Yeah.
I have an
No,
11
it's
and
very
13-year-old
valid.
girl. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah.
What are we doing to these kids just because they're having a hard time in life? We're now telling them they were born wrong? It's so abusive. This used to affect a handful of kids. Now we've got 300,000 children between the age of 12 and 17 reported by the New York Times that have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. That's just the actual diagnoses for insurance purposes. It doesn't include the other cases we don't even know about. So this has exploded. And it's this really negative message
Yeah.
that children are born wrong. That's just ideological nonsense.
Very valid.
Very valid.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you, any feedback about what he had to say, or I know you just wanted to kind of hear what he had to say,
Yeah.
but any feedback or any
I
response
think
you
what
think?
you're saying is very valid. I mean, kids are going to go through, or just people in general, just going to go through different stages in their life. I don't
Sure.
want to invalidate that if someone feels like they were born, that's not the case. But maybe waiting until they're a little bit older. And then I also heard on the flip side is that if a boy wants, just the physical changes in puberty, that's why the puberty blockers, because that can cause depression or that can cause, suicide ideations and things like that because their body is changing in a way that they don't want it to change.
Yeah.
So
Puberty's a tough time, right?
Yeah.
I give public speeches and stuff now, and I normally ask the women in the room, I did this last night at a talk I gave, how many women here love going through puberty? Guess what? Not one hand's gone up in the air yet. And I've asked this of thousands of people. So
Yeah.
it's a tough time, especially
It
for
is.
girls, because they're getting sexualized. Their innocence kind of disappears a lot more for girls than it does for boys.
Yeah.
We just got bigger and stronger. But girls are now getting bad looks from men and attention from men. They don't like that. Their
Yeah.
bodies are changing.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
But leave them alone. They're going to grow into their bodies. They're going to become comfortable with themselves.
Yeah.
And what's the greatest joy for most adults? It's having a family. It's becoming a parent. And that's being taken away from these kids because these drugs and hormones combined are sterilizing children.
Yeah.
And how can they possibly consent to any of this? They're just kids.
Yeah. I'm very curious where this is gonna head in the future. So
It'll for children, this will be banned 100% because there's no good argument for it. There's absolutely no good argument for it. I mean, some of these kids still believe in Santa Claus and they're like, hey, let's go down the path of sterilizing myself.
yeah.
They're mature enough to go through that. Even if they have the counseling, even if
Right.
they have the conversations, they could
Right.
change their mind. They're children.
Right.
But that's top word right here.
Children.
This is the big focus. Children cannot consent. We're not talking about what adults want to do within their own lives,
Right.
any of that. We're talking about children. We're trying to protect children here. So
And I can respect that.
fair enough.
Thank
Seems
you so much.
pretty reasonable take, huh?
Yeah,
Reasonable take.
That's a
Absolutely.
beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you.